The 18 Strong Podcast, episode number 104, with Ron Kaspriske of Golf Digest.
I think in the next, 10, 15, 20 years, Dustin Johnson won't be, an outlier. He'll be the norm. There'll be, if you're not driving the ball in excess of 320 to 340 yards, you're going to get lapped.
Welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast, where you get direct access to the world's greatest experts on training harder, practicing smarter, and playing better golf. Now, here's your host, Jeff Pellizzero.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast this week. The game of golf has really changed over the last 10, 15, 20 years. The landscape of the game has completely changed in regards to the people playing, the style of the game. It used to be that golf was very much a finesse sport, whereas now it seems everything is moving towards a lot more power. It's a game of strength and explosive power, and the athletes are getting bigger, they're getting stronger, much like in many other sports that we've seen. Golf has definitely in the last decade or two taken a different change of paths regarding the way the golfers train, obviously, the fitness portion. And what we talk about here on the podcast so often, it used to be that golf was much more of kind of a recreational style sport where, all different types of people were playing, different builds, different body types. And now we're seeing much more of a trend towards the more athletic build, the more fit golfer, the strength and power side. And so today I brought on a guy who's basically had a front row seat for this entire transformation of the game to see what the modern golfer is really moving towards and what the game of golf is shifting towards in the next 10, 15, 20 years. And so we have Ron Kaspriske on the line from Golf Digest. And Ron is basically the only full-time journalist in the country that reports on golf fitness. He's the senior fitness editor of Golf Digest and has been for the last 16 years. So he's been writing on golf fitness basically since the time of Tiger Woods kind of coming on the scene and starting almost this whole trend, or starting to see more of that movement towards the health and athletic and fitness side. So Ron has not only been writing on golf and fitness, but he also gets to write on other stuff like travel and instruction and other fun things like cigars and whiskey at times too, but really all under the guise of golf and the way that fitness relates to golf. And so I wanted to bring Ron on the line this week to really talk about what he's seen and the changes that he's seen. And then being that he's been writing on these topics for so long, I wanted to get his take on some of his personal tips for fitness while traveling, during a busy schedule. Obviously, he has a very busy schedule with what he does with Golf Digest and is on the road a lot. So some of the tips and tricks that he uses. And then what's his biggest piece of advice for somebody looking to improve their golf game through some sort of either fitness regimen or exercise or just new lifestyle changes. And then Ron also shares an incredible story of the time that he got to drive a golf ball into the Grand Canyon. So definitely stay tuned for that one. Now, before we bring Ron on, I would just want to give a quick shout out and big thanks to one of our biggest supporters of the show, the guys over at Rad Roller, radroller.com. And I've mentioned them many times on the show before about their myofascial tools, the Rad Roller, the Helix, the stick, the Rad balls, the Rad Rounds, all the great products that they have in order to help work on some of the soft tissue stuff and really get the body moving the way that you need it to move for your golf game, for your daily life, in the office, whatever it might be. If you haven't checked out radroller.com, go there. You get a discount just by using the code 18STRONG. But these guys have been huge supporters of the show, and I love their products. I use them on pretty much a daily basis. Took them on my little golf trip that I went on not too long ago and used it before my round. So go over and check that out. All right, without further ado, let's bring in Ron Kaspriske. Ron, thanks so much for joining us on the 18 Strong Podcast. I'm so excited to finally get you on the show.
Well, I love talking about golf and fitness, so thanks for inviting me.
Excellent. I know you're good buddies with our friend here of the show, Ben Shear, and I first have to ask you a quick question. Have you ever seen Ben not in orange?
Well, sometimes he'll kind of, spice up his outfits with a little black, to go with the orange, but pretty much he's the orange crush man.
Right. Always, either a hat or shorts or something's orange. Ben, we love you. If you're listening to the show, just had to ask. All right, Ron. So you've been with Golf Digest, I believe you said, for 16 years now as the prominent golf fitness writer. I want to know a little bit about your background, but is there maybe a person or an experience or a mentor that you've had that has really kind of guided you on your path of where you've gone and where you are today?
That's a great question. My background is really in journalism, and the fitness aspects of what I write about came from just my own interest in it. It started in college. I minored in exercise physiology, but I didn't really start to put that to use until around 2000 when I came to Golf Digest. And if you recall, that was sort of the peak of the Tiger Woods era, and Tiger sort of introduced or made more prominently the notion that fitness could play a huge role in golf performance. And I recognized at that time as a journalist that no one, and I mean no one, was writing, reporting, broadcasting anything about the fitness aspects of golf. So I saw this as an opportunity to sort of create my own little, niche world where I could, talk to the best trainers, talk to the players about how they exercise, talk to doctors, orthopedic specialists, right on down the line, any expert I could get to as to how exercise could improve golf, not just from a performance standpoint in terms of making more birdies, but also being able to play the game, well into your 70s and 80s and who knows, maybe even 90s, and also play it, and this is probably the most important part, injury-free. Because we all know, and I hate to tell your listeners, that the human body is not designed to swing a golf club. I mean, the biomechanical aspects of what you're doing put a huge stress toll on your body. So you need to do these things in order to play the game injury-free, and that's really where I came at it from.
That's awesome. It's almost like a perfect storm of being in the right place, the right time, having the right knowledge, and seeing an opportunity and kind of jumping on it, being the only guy there that really kind of saw that was the way towards the future and what some of these people were doing behind the scenes, the PGA pros. It's changed so much over the years. And a little later in the interview, I want to get into some conversations that I've had with a couple other people that I'm sure you know. We just had Dr. Greg Rose on the show talking about, some of the strength and conditioning talk that we see on the Golf Channel and other avenues. But before we do that, I want to get a little bit more about you and your story. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school?
Yeah, so I mentioned that I minored in exercise physiology. I went to the University of Florida. Go Gators. Great golf program down there. Buddy Alexander, the coach there, has been there for years. Very famous amateur golfer. I grew up in South Florida, and it's funny, I'm a late comer to the game of golf. I played other sports growing up, mostly football. Golf was sort of considered back in the 1980s. I'm telling you how old I am. Sort of the geek sport or the rich kid sport. We really didn't dabble in it. It's amazing how that's changed, by the way. When you think about, I wrote this once that, it used to be that, the quarterback, didn't want to play golf because, he didn't want his reputation to be, soiled in any way. And now it's like the quarterback doesn't even want to play quarterback anymore. He wants to be a golfer.
Right.
So, and you see that too when you see these like celebrity events. All these jocks, all they want to do is play golf. So I came into the game late in high school, started playing a little bit in college, and never played competitively. The game has always been a source of frustration for me from a scoring standpoint, but I still love it. My girlfriend, she just shakes her head because I won't blink at playing 4 or 5 days in a row. She's like, you cannot be going back out to play golf again, especially after she sees me come home with my head hung low, and there's a depression that, sort of seeps into your veins and your spirit over, poor performance. But then, the next morning I'm smiling again, ready to take another stab at it.
It's funny. I was just on a golf trip with some buddies, and we all played soccer in high school together, and we were having the conversation like, man, I wish we would have taken up golf in high school, and the same comments came up, kind of like, I don't even know who played golf in high school. That was kind of like you said, the rich kid or the nerdy sport in our eyes, and now we're all like, man, I wish I would have. And you're so right that, you know, the major league pitchers and the quarterbacks are all, you know, really good golfers, and it sounds like that's what they do with their free time, and it's the whole mindset has totally kind of changed. And then speaking of your girlfriend and her, you know, not understanding you wanting to go back out, I recently went on a trip that my wife played 9 holes with me, and as we're riding through, you know, this beautiful course, she kind of looks at me, she's like, I think I get it now. I think I get why you guys want to get out here all the time. First of all, you're escaping from the 3 kids that we have at home, and you know, for a short block of time, and it's just beautiful. And you know, if you have fun with it and you can enjoy it, why would you not want to keep going out there?
It's exactly. I think I come at it from 2 different ways. You know, I do love the pastoral aspects of the game. I also love the camaraderie, because I think golfers have sort of this unspoken bond. I mean, you know, the guy in front of you, you know, who's playing slow and driving you nuts, you know, even that guy, you have a connection to that. It's almost indescribable, like that feeling that, because you both know what it feels like to hit the ball in the sweet spot of the club, or what it feels like to get that brush of cool breeze at 6:30 at night as the sun's going down in a late fall, you know, round of golf. I mean, those experiences sort of just, you know, resonate. It's like a tuning fork, and your heart goes off for guys like us. And it's a game that, you know, once you're truly exposed to, and I don't mean like one round or playing in a charity scramble, when you're truly exposed to it, it's really hard to walk away from it.
That's absolutely true. Such beauty out on the course, and you're right. I mean, just what you were saying there, those feelings come back to you, and you get that rush, and you want to go and have it more and experience that more often. Now, how did you go from journalism school to then being able to take a position at Golf Digest?
Yeah, that's kind of a neat story. I started in newspaper journalism. Wrote for several years for some papers in Florida, one of which was the Fort Myers News Press. Not a huge paper, but they were owned at the time. I think they still might be. They were owned at the time by the Gannett newspaper chain. Gannett, as you might know, also owned USA Today. So I was one of the few people in that newspaper chain that was writing full-time about golf. If you've ever been to the Fort Myers, Naples area, there's more golf courses per capita there than I think pretty much anywhere in the United States. Myrtle Beach might challenge them, but there's well over 100 golf courses in about a 40-mile stretch of wow. I-75 down in Southwest Florida. So I was writing about golf full-time. That was my job for the news press. And, you know, I got to cover the British Open. I got to go to the Masters because Gannett wanted somebody to supply their other newspapers with stories on the majors and the professional tournaments. Well, long story short, I'm at the British Open. I run into an old college buddy who happened to work for the New York Times, who owned Golf Digest, and he said they had a job opening. I should apply. I figured it was 1,000,000 to 1 shot. You know, Golf Digest to me is the Bible, has always been the Bible. I remember reading it, you know, long before I even knew, you know, that there was an opportunity to work there, and just thinking how great it might be to work there. And anyway, so I sent my resume in, and lo and behold, they called, and I got the job, and that's, you know, my dream came true 16 years ago.
That's awesome. Such a cool story. And I mean, I would imagine that, you know, you get in there, you start writing. What was it like when you first got there? You know, you're there at a place where you said you considered the Bible of golf. You finally walk in the door there. What was that like day one?
Well, I you know, people ask me all the time. You know, they say, "God, so it must be so great to work there, and what's it like?" And I think I wish you could put a camera up and watch what goes on in our office from the time we get there till the time we leave. Because, I mean, you want to talk about, you know, I always tell people, like, golf is a sport that you can't write about unless you are really into it. You can't fake golf knowledge. Well, I also think you can't fake golf passion. You can't pretend you like the game. It'll come out. It'll show that if you don't really like golf. Well, that's not a problem at Golf Digest. You know, everybody there is swinging clubs in the office, chipping down hallways. We have a putting green. You know, we're talking about golf. We're talking about golf clothes, equipment, the pro tours. So when I got there, I was just like, oh my God, this is like, it's like you're 10 years old and somebody hands you the keys to a candy shop and says, get whatever you want. So I walked in there and I'm like, this is great. All we do is talk about golf all day. So I know some people are like, oh my God, this guy's obsessed. I'm not, believe me, compared to some of the people I work with, I am not golf obsessed, but maybe to the average person, yeah, he pretty much into this thing.
I think you probably have a few people on the other end listening, searching how they can find an application to put their resume in right now, because it just sounds like such a great environment. And obviously, you're so true. If you don't really have the passion, it will come out, and people will see that in your writing or your videos or whatever. Now, since you have been writing with Golf Digest about fitness since 2000, what are some of the biggest changes that you've seen through the game because of this introduction to fitness? And what are some of the things that, both good and bad maybe, that you've seen since you've really started writing and been in the trenches?
Well, I think golf has had a bit of a roller coaster ride over the last 15 years. It was definitely ascending right through Tiger's amazing performance in the right at the turn of the century. And then it sort of took another dive because I believe the game didn't grow as fast as people thought it would. So equipment companies, golf course designers may have overextended a little. We may have built up in anticipation of this mass, interest in golf that never really materialized. It still grew, and it is growing. But it's not at the rates of maybe, people had anticipated because of Tiger. So you have that aspect of it. Is the state of the game, I think, is healthy and strong. But, go rewind 5 years ago, and we had the game, the people who anticipated this growth may have, like I said, overextended in terms of building golf courses and starting up golf companies and whatnot. So we have that aspect of it. The other aspect I think that's changed dramatically is how the game is played. The term bomb and gouge comes to mind. That didn't really, land in anybody's vocabulary until after Tiger and other guys on tour like, Bubba Watson and J.B. Holmes and Camilo Villegas and those guys started showing, Hank Keeney started showing that you just to hit the ball as far as you can, worry about where it lands later, and then, you're going to be so short into the hole that you can just sort of, gouge a wedge onto it, and that's the way the game is played. So from a strategy standpoint, that definitely has evolved. And then the biomechanics of the golf swing have changed dramatically as well. Partly, again, we can go back to look at how Tiger swung the club when he was working with Butch Harmon and the incredible amount of torque he was putting on his spine and hip rotation to generate power. That's the way kids are swinging at it now. You only have to look at a guy like, Dustin Johnson, how he moves through the ball to see that he's trying to generate as much torque and power as he can. Whereas back in the day, the swing was a little bit more graceful. It was a little more fluid, a lot less, we'll call it violent, for lack of a better term. And I think that's something that, that's here to stay. Kids are, when you go to these junior camps or, academies where, there's kids in their early teens, they're all trying to swing out of their shoes. I mean, just look at a guy like Justin Thomas. I think soaking wet, he's 150 pounds, and he can fly a ball 300 yards, no problem. I mean, I've never carried a ball 300 yards, except the time I hit it into the Grand Canyon, but that's another story.
That sounds like a great story.
It is a pretty good story. Do
you see, I'm going to let you tell that in a little bit then. Do you see that this is going to hold longevity-wise? I mean, since these guys are, going out there and bombing a ball, or do you ever see it kind of scaling back to, or how do you see the guys that are a little more finesse-oriented out there versus the guys that are bombing it? Do you see it holding up where the guys hitting it longer are going to be scoring lower, or do you kind of see it going back and forth?
No, I think in the next 10, 15, 20 years, Dustin Johnson won't be an outlier. He'll be the norm. There'll be if you're not driving the ball in excess of 320 to 340 yards, you're going to get lapped. It's just the way the game is played. And, I didn't mention it earlier, but I think part of it has to do with equipment. The advancements in equipment have been incredible. And because of that, it's enabling people to really take advantage of these violent, torquing-like slings to make the ball go farther. Justin Thomas isn't going to be able to keep up with Dustin. I did say Justin Thomas isn't going to be able to keep up with Dustin Johnson unless he has great equipment and that swing that we mentioned before where, he's literally coming off the ground with his feet. They're using ground as leverage more than ever now, and they're really trying to explode through the ball. And that's going to be here to stay. You're going to see it at all levels of golf. In fact, you're going to see girls and women hitting the ball farther than, the average male hits it now within 10 years. I mean, it's just the way that in order to play this game, especially with the length of golf courses, that's how you're going to have to do it.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. And I think this is probably a good time to interject the idea and maybe the notions of good or bad strength training for golfers. And because of these guys and girls swinging so violently and putting so much stress on their body, I know there's been a lot of back and forth in the media on, Rory's pictures of him deadlifting and different guys, Jason Day, doing some heavier weights and stuff like that. Where do you stand on the topic of, is what's too much, what is enough, and, some of the different arguments for and against?
Well, here's a classic name drop for you. I spent a little time with Rory right after that incident where Brandel Chambly on the Golf Channel and others, I won't just pin it on Brandel, suggested that, his intense training, including Olympic-style lifting, was to the detriment of his game. I just laugh at that. I really do, because can you imagine telling any other athlete in any other sport that you shouldn't be exercising or training in the gym or weightlifting or strength training, however you want to label it, because it's going to be to the detriment of playing your sport? That is ridiculous. The golf swing is an athletic movement. Whether or not you think golf is a sport that can be compared to football or hockey or any other, baseball, whatever, I don't care where you fall on the fence of whether golf is a sport in that, regard. The golf swing is definitely an athletic movement. And you got to get, especially now, you got to get in the gym. Not only do you have to train to hit the ball farther, but as I mentioned earlier, it's become so important to work on mobility, to work on, just basically core stability and all these things to stay injury free. So whereas some people would think, this stuff's going to get Rory hurt, I counter, it's going to keep him from getting hurt.
Yeah, I think that's really kind of what Greg Rose was talking about too when he was on episode 100 here. Again, somebody who has conversed with Rory, has talked with Rory, has actually analyzed Rory and his swing, and he mentioned the fact that guys like him, a Justin Thomas, a Ricky Fowler, these guys, they don't have the big, strong physiques naturally, and if you don't work on, being able to handle that velocity and that force that they're creating, those guys are going to break down. And Rory, as a young kid, was already having back pain, I believe. And so if, without interjecting, who knows where he would be if he'd even be playing the game still. And same with a lot of these other guys, because, as you mentioned, I think the game has changed so much. I have a good friend of mine who's a strength coach. He told me, if you ever get a chance to interview Johnny Miller, ask him how Rory being a fatter, slower golfer wearing baggier shirts is going to make him any better. And I thought that was just a great and funny question to throw out at Johnny Miller. But I think you're right. I think these guys have to protect themselves and make sure that they're doing the right things and surround themselves with good people, because anybody can do something stupid in the gym. But when they have the medical teams around them, I think you're exactly right that you're improving their longevity as opposed to hurting them.
Yeah, and just for your listeners out there, because I've been sort of speaking in broad generalities about this type of golf swing, but to clarify what I'm talking about, the best players are the biggest hitters today. What they do is they restrict their lower body movement in the backswing and just make as big a torso rotation as they can. So in other words, their hips don't move, but their trunk does. And then almost the reverse, as soon as they start the downswing, in fact, before the downswing even starts, their hips spring back toward the target. And this creates this whip-like action that really torques the bottom of their spine. We call it the lumbar spine. And that torsion and that torquing over time takes its toll, not just on the, I shouldn't even just say just on the spine, but also on the joints, because, let's be honest, you can only swing a golf club as fast as you can stop it. And if you can't swing fast and safely slow down a club through, the strength in your shoulders and your scapula and whatnot, that's also going to cause injuries. But this is what the modern golf swing is. It's that, restrict your hips going back and then fire them going through to create that whip-like action. Some people, they ask, what does that mean, modern golf swing? That's probably the best way to explain it.
That's a great description. I appreciate you kind of backtracking there and describing that very well. You've had a chance to work with tons of people, instructors, players. Who would you say are a couple people that you've learned the most from over your years in the industry?
In golf fitness, you mentioned, Ben, obviously. I first met Ben Shear at the Titleist Performance Institute. Every other year holds something called the World Golf Fitness Summit. And I've attended these, going back 10 years now or more. I can't even remember when the first one was. I think it was in Orlando. I heard Ben Shear speak at one of these original fitness summits, and I was blown away by not just what he knew, but the common sense aspect that he brings to talking about golf and fitness. Because a lot of these guys try to make it harder or more, complex than it needs to be just to sound smart. And Ben's the opposite. He's like, no, it's this because of this. And you're like, I never thought of it, but yeah, you're right. So I was blown away by him, and I've sort of, used him as my, stopping off point for a lot of the exercise articles that I write. I also want to credit Ralph Simpson. A lot of people might not know who Ralph is, but Ralph was one of the first guys on the fitness trailer for the PGA Tour. Really smart guy. He's sort of low-key and, not a self-promoter. In fact, he works in Montana, so it's kind of hard to get to him if you ever want to get some physical therapy. But he's a really smart guy, and he knows golf biomechanics as well as anybody. I'll give credit to the guys at TPI, Dave Phillips and Greg Rose. I know Dave a little bit better than Greg, but that's also because, I'm an instruction writer as well as the fitness editor for the magazine. So Dave obviously is a great golf instructor as well as knowing quite a bit about golf and fitness. So I kind of pick his brain a lot. Geez, I hope I don't want to leave anybody out, because there's a lot of people I do, talk to. I really like the work of Mark Verstegen. He works for Exos, or he founded Exos. I shouldn't say work, but he's the man there. Exos is probably might be the number one world-class training facility for athletes in the country, not just golfers, but all athletes. Great people out there. So I have a lot of people that have influenced me and really helped bring me along, because don't forget, my educational background, although I did have a minor in this stuff, really it pales in comparison to what they know. So I sort of have to split time between feeling like I'm an authority on golf fitness and feeling like more I'm just a speaker for other people to get their messages across.
Yeah, and I love that too. That's kind of what I see 18 Strong being, is I work in the golf fitness industry, but reaching out to people like you and Ben and the guys from TPI, and trying to learn as much as I can, but also just like you're doing is putting the information that these incredible coaches and athletes have and putting it in a format for the reader, the listener, and hoping to improve their golf game. You've also co-authored several books. I know that there's one that with Jim Hardy that I have sitting on the shelf. I have a signed copy from Jim, and I went through the Plain Truth Level 1 certification, so I know Jim a little bit, and also the A-Swing. What's it like working with some of these legends in golf like Jim and those kind of guys, and how does that writing process even work with them?
Oh, that's a great question. So I have two responses to what it's like to work with them. First of all, it's fascinating to see how different teachers can approach the game and yet be successful. That's why I truly believe there's no one way to swing the golf club, and I don't think there's one way to teach how to swing a golf club. So it's fascinating from that aspect because these guys are all brilliant at what they do, and yet they are so different. The second part of this is because I do work with so many of these, we are our top 50 teachers list guys. They all have a tip for me, and they're all different. So I have the joy of going to the golf course every day with about 7,000 swing thoughts in my head, and I have to figure out which one to use that day that's going to work.
Yeah, from the greatest teachers in the world too. So it's not like you're getting it from Joe down on the driving range. It's like Jim Hardy and some of these other guys that are giving you tips, and it's like, oh man, these are conflicting thoughts. That's got to be tough.
Yeah, I want your listeners to know that. Don't feel sorry for me because if that's my worst problem, that's not a bad problem to have.
Agreed. How do you personally, talking about your golf game, and I know you probably travel a lot and are very busy, how do you personally go about staying fit on the road and taking care of your diet and things like that? I know that can be very tough when you're traveling or when you have a crazy schedule.
Yeah, that's a good point to make, is that, we all try to get into what we'll call routines in fitness. And I try to preach the opposite to people. I said, you don't want it to be routine. For one, you don't want to feel like you're just going through the motions of whatever it is you're doing for exercise. I say mix it up. And part of mixing it up for me is what I do when I travel, because I don't have the opportunities I do here. For example, I'm a big swimmer. I like swimming in open water. I can do that here. I can't do it in February when I'm in Chicago, and I'm not a big pool swimmer. So I have to figure out something else to do. But that's the great thing about, this world we live in terms of exercise is, sometimes you hit the gym, sometimes you do some cardio, you can go for a bike ride, you can run. Heck, even, raking leaves is a beneficial exercise for golfers and for anybody, but, especially golfers because of the muscles that it trains. So for me, all I do is move in some way or another, and I keep mixing it up to keep everything fresh. You won't see me too often, spend a solid month doing only one thing. I'll probably have done a half dozen different things in that month that people would consider exercise.
Do you have some favorite like mobility drills or any kind of favorite products that you travel with? Any kind of a foam roller or a lacrosse ball or anything like that? Dave Herman, who's another guy who's influenced me, I should mention him as well. I am a huge believer in his product, which is the Super Flex Band. I don't know if any of your listeners are familiar with it, but it's a looped band. It's elastic. They come in different widths or I should say flexibility. So some of them are obviously harder to tug than others. You can get handles for them. You can get, basically a platform where you can anchor the bands for things. And the great thing about the bands is you can throw them in your golf bag. You can throw them in your suitcase. They're really lightweight. And they're very portable. So you can do quite a bit of work in a hotel room, wherever you're at, on the golf course, in the gym. And, to me, I think they're genius. So that's something I always have with me. Yeah, I've heard really good things about the Superflex bands. I haven't tried them. I've got some other elastic and resistance bands, but definitely need to get my hands on some of those. All right, before we get into a couple of the last, kind of rapid fire questions, let's hear the Grand Canyon story. Oh, yeah, the Grand Canyon. This is great. So before I became a golf writer, I covered college football for the newspaper in Tampa, which, by the way, is no longer in existence after like 150-plus years. That just shows you how the newspaper industry has fallen, the Tampa Tribune. So I was out covering the Fiesta Bowl one year. This is, back in the mid-1990s, early 1990s, and I had never been to the Grand Canyon. So
one day on a sort of leading up to the bowl game week, there wasn't much going on with either of the teams that I was there to cover. Me and a couple other sports writers got in a car and drove I think it's like 3 or 4 hours north of Phoenix to the Grand Canyon. So when we get there, there's a park ranger right at the front gate. And we're like, oh, I forgot, you got to pay admission to get in or whatever. That's fine. And he just waves us through. And we stop and go, it's free today. He said at that time, the federal government was on strike. I don't know if you remember this, but
No.
Because of that, all, national park rangers are federal government employees. So the Grand Canyon was just basically open and you could just go right in. So we did. So it was obviously it's January in Arizona, so it's 70 in Phoenix, but at the Grand Canyon, it's like 40 degrees. But we walked around. We didn't spend too much time there, but it was getting to be close to dark, and we were getting ready to leave. And I was on the south rim of the canyon, and I was like, I got to do it. So popped open the trunk, pulled out a golf ball, teed it up, and I crushed it too. I think that ball might still be going, but got back in the car and drove away. Hopefully nobody got hit at the bottom, but I think I'm pretty safe there.
I was going to say, if anybody's touring through the Grand Canyon, they find a Pro V1, it's probably got an RK on it.
I was like, God, I must be violating about 5 laws. So maybe we'll say this allegedly happened.
Allegedly. We'll put that in there. All right, couple last-minute quick questions before we let you go. One of the favorite questions on the show is, are you more of a Caddyshack or Happy Gilmore guy?
Definitely Caddyshack.
Nice. And if you could walk 18 holes, and you've probably had several of these opportunities, but if you could walk 18 holes with anyone, past, present, future, it doesn't necessarily have to be in the world of golf, who would it be and what course would you go to?
Okay, I'm shooting from the hip here, right? Because I haven't really given this any thought, but I do have an answer that I think will be satisfactory. I would love to have played 18 holes with Jackie Gleason.
Wow. Haven't had that one on the show. And where would you play? Well, first of all, why Jackie Gleason?
Growing up, I just loved, the Honeymooners, and I just thought he was funny. He was both funny and cool. And of course, the Smokey and the Bandit movies when I was a kid, Sheriff Buford T. Justice, I believe was his name. He's just cool. And as far as where we would play, a guy like him, you got to play like in Vegas. So maybe we would have played like the old Desert Inn course or something.
Awesome. All right. What would you say, being with Golf Digest for the last 16 years and hopefully many more, what is your mission through your writing, through your videos, and everything that you're doing there?
My mission is twofold. It's to entertain and educate. And I'm not sure which one comes first. I think with fitness, a lot of people roll their eyes and, immediately, shut off the thinking light because they don't want to know, or they're just not interested in exercise. So for them, that's where the entertainment part comes in. I have to give them something to keep them engaged just long enough that they might learn something. And from an education standpoint, I'm kind of proud of this because, let's face it, when you write about golf, you don't have too many opportunities to give back to your community in a way that, a doctor or a policeman or somebody who has to basically help the community would do, or somebody who works in charity, that sort of thing. So the fact that I am writing about golf fitness, I feel like I'm making people feel better, look better. And, if they play better as a byproduct, great. But the fact that, I'm contributing possibly to helping somebody, live longer and feel better and, just generally be healthier, that's part of my job I'm very proud of and I take very seriously.
I have to ask, I meant to ask this a little bit earlier, have you gotten a lot of feedback, and what's some of the best feedback that you've gotten from your readers and your listeners and viewers? Because I know here at 18 Strong, we get some emails every now and then about, how something has improved their game or has made them feel way better, has helped an injury. Do you get a lot of emails in those kinds of responses?
I do get some feedback from, I feel like there's a core group of golfers who are very interested in what I'm reporting on. And then I feel like there's a yet another group, a larger group of people who are sometimes interested in what I'm reporting on and will share their, comments or thoughts. But generally speaking, the thing that I'm always a little bit amazed at is how uneducated people are about fitness. And I see it every time I go to a big box gym. I just watch people doing exercises and doing, I don't even know if you can call them exercises, things that I know are going to get them hurt. And I'm wondering, like, did someone tell them to do that? Did they see someone else do that? Or are they just making it up as they go along? But the way people approach it, you know, from the feedback standpoint, getting back to your question, is the questions they ask me, it's like, wow, they really still don't know that this is bad for you, whatever it is, you know? And that's the part that always surprises me. It's not the, hey, thanks, this helped me, I'm hitting it 20 yards farther, or God, you know, my hips have never felt better. It's the guys that are, you know, writing in or emailing me or stopping me when they see me and asking me, you know, hey, you know, can I do this? And I'm like, whoa, what are you doing? You know, so it's a little bit of, I don't know whether people take exercise professionals seriously because there's no way to regulate, you know, the knowledge. The way you become a doctor is a lot different than the way you become an expert in fitness, whatever your title is. And I know there's certifications like TPI, and that's certainly helping make it a little more legitimate. But overall, people will go into a Gold's Gym, find some 25-year-old guy who looks like he's been lifting weights all his life, and literally put their lives into that person's hands without knowing anything about their accreditation. That's scary.
That is scary. That absolutely is. All right, Ron, before we let you go, any last pieces of advice, and then let the audience know where they can find you and find, you know, some of the content that you have online.
Yeah, here's a great one, because, you know, I know a lot of people think, well, I don't have time to exercise. Do you have 10 minutes? Do you have 10 minutes every day to do something that you would consider strenuous? That's all you really need. I mean, great if you want to spend an hour or two in the gym 5 to 7 days a week. You don't have to. Okay, just move a little more, stretch a little more, definitely foam roll, and do a little bit of strength training. Heck, 10 push-ups. I'm not asking for much. All of this stuff will both benefit you from a health perspective and also from a golf performance perspective.
Awesome. And where can everybody find you?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, two-part. You know, most of my fitness stuff can be found at golfdigest.com. Hopefully some of you out there still read the tree version of our magazine. You know, we still like to print one. And of course, you can see my stuff on various other platforms like YouTube and whatnot. Not only do I do videos myself where I demonstrate exercises for golfers, but I also feature basically the brightest minds in golf fitness. You'll see a lot of videos from trainers like Ben Shear, who works with a lot of guys on tour, Damon Goddard, who works with Jordan Spieth. You'll see Joey DiDiosalvi, who works with, you know, Dustin Johnson. You'll see all these guys, you know, definitely Dave Phillips and Greg Rose from TPI, all these guys that, you know, you really should be listening to and letting me, you know, get their message across. That's
awesome. Well, Ron, I just have to say I want to thank you for your time. I know you're a very busy guy, and just for the work that you're doing for the golf fitness community and the golf community in general, and have been for so many years. I mean, definitely a front runner in the industry that has really kind of blown up in the past several years for, you know, and has provided employment for myself and many of the other trainers and people that have been on the show. So keep doing what you're doing, man. We love it. Love Golf Digest. And like you said, you're bringing the best and brightest minds into your world and reporting on them, but also keeping it entertaining and fun so the average golfer can get that benefit as well. So thanks for coming on.
It was my pleasure, and I apologize if I rambled a little bit today, but I get passionate about these topics.
Not at all, man. We love it. Everybody on the line here is a golf nerd just like us, so they wouldn't be listening to a golf fitness podcast if they didn't have the same kind of passion you do.
Good point.
All right, everybody, if you want more information on this episode, which is episode number 104 with Ron Kaspriske, just go over to 18strong.com. You can search 104, episode number 104, or search for Ron. You'll find it there. I'm going to link up a lot of the different things that we talked about in here, as well as some of Ron's stuff on Golf Digest, so you can find all the information over there. If you haven't gotten a chance to check out our book, The Golfer's Guide to a Bogey-Proof Workout, go to bogeyproofworkout.com. You can check it out there. And as always, train hard, practice smart, and play better golf.
Thanks for listening to the 18 Strong podcast at www.18strong.com. And remember, train hard, practice smart, and play better golf.